welcome to another expert interview. And today I am delighted to be joined by Dan McDade. How are you doing, Dan?
Good, John. How about you?
Good, doing great. My name is John Golden from Pipeliner CRM and SalesPOP Online Sales Magazine. And the subject that I wanted to talk to Dan today about, Dan wrote this great book called The Truth About Leads. And I want to talk about sales and marketing alignment and the truth about leads. Because I'm still kind of a bit surprised that in 2017 we're still having the conversation about sales and marketing alignment, right? But it seems to be more critical than ever that those pieces are come together much more kind of fluidly and in a more impactful way because of the crossovers between the two and just the change in buyer behavior. So, Dan, why are we talking sales marketing alignment in 2017?
I think it's because of the usual breakdown between marketing and sales. Marketing thinks it's responsible for one thing. Sometimes that's generating hand raisers or people who are interested supposedly in the solution. And sales obviously is responsible for revenue. And until we get both sides working toward the same goal, we're going to continue to have problems. I think we've seen it over and over again. If you take a look at Salesforce automation and then CRM and then marketing automation and now the holy grail of marketing is account-based marketing. Mm-hmm. But marketers seem to always want to turn these solutions into kind of black boxes or IP-based marketing. I was with a client the other day, and they were talking about how well integrated marketing and sales was. And what was integrated is that they were able to send emails out to the masses, using the sales rep's name who was going to call on them. But what I think has happened is that I think a lot of the marketing technology has made it possible to get more bad leads to sales faster than ever before. And unfortunately, it's breaking down because sales is still complaining about lead quality. And they also still complain about lead quantity. Yet I'm not sure, and I shouldn't say this as a blanket statement. There are a lot of really smart and good marketers out there, but there are a lot of people out there that pick up on, I want to buy a black box. I want to put email addresses in one end and out the other end come leads for sales. And that's their total view of what they should do.
Yeah, I think, genuinely, this is true for sales as well as marketing is, I think that, we have so much technology now and so many tools out there and we live in a culture now where we almost expect everything to just magically happen, technology to do it. So, part, I think, of the problem, and this is an interesting one because I talked to Matt Hines recently, again, about sales and marketing alignment. And I was asking him about this whole notion of marketing automation and inbound and how that had kind of spoiled salespeople a little bit and maybe spoiled marketing people a little bit of this idea where everything can come into them. And he mentioned you and he said your concept is all bound.
Right. Yeah, I think that for years the market has ignored outbound. And they look at inbound, and you've read the articles, I'm sure too, about 70% of the sales process is complete before a sales rep needs to get involved.
Sure.
And there's a lot of people, Julie Schwartz being among them from ITSMA, saying that it's quite the opposite, that buyers want to engage with salespeople throughout the buying process, and it's important that you get in early. And these are my words now, not hers, but it's important you get in early because otherwise you'll end up as column fodder in an evaluation that was already won by somebody else. And if you're waiting until 70% or 80% or 90% of the sales process to be done, or the buying process to be done, you've waited too long. You just need to get in earlier.
Yeah. So what are some of the steps that you would advise an organization to take in order to start getting sales and marketing better aligned?
And I think this sounds really simplistic, and I think because it sounds somewhat simplistic, maybe it's not believable in some cases. But really, what I've seen it come down to is that the company, the marketing people, and the salespeople share the common definition of what is the market. I saw one company. This has been a number of years ago, but I saw one company go through about $100 million because marketing and sales had totally different views of who they were selling to. Marketing was marketing point solutions to small businesses, and sales wanted to sell 7, 8, 9-figure deals,
right,
to enterprises, and unfortunately they never got together, so it never worked out. So the first thing is to define the market accurately, and there's a couple of companies that do a really good job of and they use account-based marketing processes. But the first thing they do is make sure that they've got the right sized target market. They're not trying to boil the ocean, sell to the whole world. They know who they will be able to work with, and that's something that we're learning. I mean, recently we found out that we had been eliminating a group of customers or a group of prospects between, say, 20 and $50 million. That actually there's some real veins of gold there for us. And historically, we felt like, well, we had to do companies that were $50 million and greater. Right. So that, you continue to learn. I think the second thing is, and again, this is very simplistic, but is the common definition of a lead. If you don't have the same expectation of marketing generating leads that sales will accept and will follow up on, then you're going to constantly have a disconnect. And there's something that I recommend companies put into place to fix this, and that is what I call the judicial branch. And the judicial branch is made up probably not of just marketing people or just salespeople, but other people in the organization. It might even be the CEO or the COO or the SVP of sales and marketing, but a number of people who watch the exceptions. So if the company has defined the lead a certain way, and leads are being sent to sales, if sales is rejecting them, proactively rejecting them because they don't meet the lead criteria, then that has to be looked at by this team of what I call the judicial branch, because the only way you're ever going to fix this problem is to isolate what's going on. If in fact the lead was no good, it didn't meet the lead definition, but you've got to work with marketing to make sure that they're following the rules. If instead, though, and Serious Decisions has a word for this, they call it it's some sort of odd reason that the sales will just not follow up on the lead, and they may reject it to say, I've already been in there and there was nothing going on. If the lead meets the lead definition, then the lead should be followed up on by sales. And to the extent they're not following up on it, and it's really something they should follow up on, then the judicial branch handles that. If it's something where a bad lead has been sent to them, the judicial branch handles that. But putting something in place for exceptions is very important.
Yeah, because it seems to me often that there's a lot of attention paid to processes within functions, right? So processes within marketing and processes within the sales department, but not enough attention paid to how they overlap and what the process is for both of them working together. Because you raised a great point there about the definition of the market, right? Quite often, sales and marketing aren't together when the market is being defined, or as you say, they define the market separately in different meetings, in different strategy sessions, and marketing go off and produce their stuff and sales go off and chase after their targets. But it just seems to me that there's not enough attention being paid to the processes where functions come together.
I totally agree. Those connection points between marketing and sales are critical to make, and where the building blocks for that are, who are we trying to sell to? There's a Mike Weinberg has a great book, New Sales Simplified, two great books, New Sales Simplified and Sales Management Simplified, and he talks about this. The building blocks are: do we know who we're trying to sell to? Do we know what titles we're trying to reach? What is the common message that has to be brought to the market? Because if you ask 3 marketers and 3 salespeople, you get 6 different answers to, what the core message is. And, what defines a lead? If the lead really should be anything up to 2 or 3 sales cycles out, sales may not like that. But if that's the right definition of a lead, then that's what should be used, and that's what they should measure marketing on. So making sure that you have that measurement, and then some way of policing it. This judicial branch is extremely important for policing, but that puts that glue into place between the organizations. So there is a process that is just beyond just marketing and beyond just sales.
And then from a buyer point of view, I mean, as you see today, buyers are more sophisticated to a degree. And they're also becoming harder and harder to contact, right? So it's meaning that, organizations need to be a little bit more sophisticated. What are you seeing in terms of the best, how organizations are doing this best, how they're dealing with a buyer who's a bit more sophisticated, a buyer who has, maybe makes it very difficult to connect with them?
Well, one of the things that we find over and over again, and then it is that the right level of decision maker will be responsive to a message that resonates. And as simple as that sounds, what they don't want to do is they don't want to enter into a conversation with somebody who really doesn't know what they're talking about, or starts the conversation out by saying, "What's keeping you awake at night?" The expectation on the side of the buyer right now is that you have done enough homework to understand, what their situation is and what they might be interested in. But there's an expression that I have, that not every senior executive wants to be treated like a human equivalent of a pinball, only getting your attention when they've hit the right bumpers and scored enough points. And that pinball machine is a good example of how marketing automation works. And the most senior executives are not as responsive, so they don't give up their digital body language.
Sure.
Meaning that you're not really getting them if you're just going all inbound. So that's where this all bound concept comes out, is making sure that you're using all of the tools. Also, persistence is extremely important. I can't tell you how many senior executives I talk to, week after week, and they say that I got a call from somebody, they left a message, and actually I thought it sounded pretty good. I figure I'll probably talk to them at some point, but then they never call back. So they've made one call, they've left a great message, they've planted a seed, but the seed just dies because it doesn't get watered. It doesn't get any kind of follow up. So making sure that if you do have the right target market and you do have the right executive, using all of the tools, using voicemail, email, live calling, just using everything to get through to them. Because a perfect example of this is we had this $1 billion sale one time after the 42nd touch, where the CFO of the fourth largest utility said, "Don't stop calling me, you're my conscience." Well, 42 touches was a lot of touches over a 3-month period, but it happened to be just exactly the right number of touches. And, I think that's the key, is just making sure that you're not just all email or all direct mail or all, it's not all calls either. It's a combination of different tools that are available out there. And also that it needs to be one-to-one as opposed to one-to-many. We've talked about that now for 10 or 15 years, that, marketing has to become one-to-one. And with marketing automation, to a great extent, it's enabled, just a lot more spam cannons out there. Yeah. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we take the message back to one-to-one, which again ties into account-based marketing.
Yeah, no, those are really good points, and I think it's people today, they have so many they have preferences on how they want to be contacted, or it's always a timing issue, right? You may email me 50 times over the space of a couple of months, and I may not even see them or delete them all, and you may call me on the right day or email me on the day when I'm thinking about that particular issue, right? So it's
exactly.
So you always got to remember that the buyer's never working on your time frame.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the other interesting things, to talk about the idea of persistence, because to some degree, I feel that persistence has not gotten a bad name, but it's kind of like fallen away a little bit. Where people tend to give up, I think, a lot quicker than they would have at once upon a time. What do you attribute that to?
Well, part of it is the press that inbound has gotten, that that you can wait for them to call you, so you don't have to be quite as persistent on an outbound basis. And really, that's totally wrong. I mean, most of the companies that we work with, they're very aggressive outbound marketers. Even the marketing automation companies are among the most. They're really, really aggressive when it comes to outbound marketing. So, I think that's the key, is to make sure that there's balance. I think that if you don't have balance, and the persistence piece of it is, we talk about professional and persistent. So it's not a matter of leaving a message that says, "John, you need to get back to me right away."
Yeah.
And putting people in fear or something like that. You have to give them some reasons to want to give you a call back, and that takes a little bit of research. And it's not about just going down a list and making call after call. It's making intelligent calls, whether you're using the telephone or intelligent emails, if you're sending out emails on a one-to-one basis.
Yeah, and I like the idea, the all bound of, you got to get creative too. I remember a number of years ago when I was running a different company. One of our salespeople, actually in Toronto, in Canada, there was a cluster of target businesses within a small kind of geographic area. So I was talking to him and I said, "Well, why don't you just try calling in? Nobody does it anymore. Nobody just calls into the front desk. Just give it a go, just for a laugh, and see what happens, right? So he did this to about 10 companies, and he got an appointment with the head of sales in one of those organizations, because he saw him at the reception with brochures, talking to the receptionist. And he said he went back at the receptionist after he left, and he said, "Who was that?" And she said, "It was a sales guy. He left off this." And he says, "Really?" The sales guy called in. He said, "I haven't seen that for years." He goes, "I got to talk to this guy." So he called him in, because he was blown away. And he said, "Geez, I wish some of my salespeople would do stuff like that. It's great to see somebody going old school to buck the trend," kind of thing. I mean, the point is, I think you have to be probably more creative than ever, rather than relying on a single method, right?
Yeah, more creative and also on target. For example, our messaging includes talking about how companies are finding it difficult to scale, whether that's because they can't find and hire the right people, or they're concerned that what they're doing really isn't working, but they don't know how to fix it, or they just need more arms and legs out there to help them get to their number. And that seems to resonate. So you have to have the right message. Whether you're delivering it on the phone or face to face or whatever, it's absolutely critical to have that right message.
Yeah. So in the few minutes we have left here, what would be your advice to maybe a sales organization how to engage better with their marketing counterparts?
Well, you read all the time about how marketing should ride along with sales, and certainly that's one thing that you could do. But I think that the truth is just getting together and first of all, making sure that the marketing, the head of marketing, as an example, is really on the same page. I had one head of marketing that we worked with, and he said, if the CEO told me my job was to drive demand through sales, I would quit. My job is of awareness. And then said, there's very few companies these days that can afford to spend their money on awareness. Most companies are focused on generating deals for their guys, So, that's one thing, is getting into the same room. I gave this advice to a client company. This has been a few years ago, but we would get together once a quarter, and it was senior people. It was the CEO, the CSO, the CMO, and maybe a CFO. And we would go down the list of prospects, and the CEO and the CFO was demanding, really, in a sense, to what's the status of these, and quarter after quarter we really didn't know the status. And one time I said to him, we could actually call, in the 3 days we sit here and talk about this, we could actually call every sales rep and say, here's a gun to your head, so you're going to get shot if you're over or under this number, but you're going to tell us right now who you're going to close in the next quarter and who's not going to close. And that would have been a lot more direct way of doing it. And there was some great dialogue that we had, between sales and marketing, recognizing that neither one of those jobs is simple, but as long as we can coordinate together and work toward the same goal, then we're going to have a lot better outcome.
Excellent. Okay, well, listen, Dan, it's been a great conversation as usual. In the last couple of seconds here, I'd love you if you would tell the viewers a little bit more about yourself, about your organization, and how they can contact you.
Thank you for that. Pointclear.com is our URL, and my name is Dan McDade. You could also call me at 678-533-2722, or you can email me at dan.mcdade@pointclear.com. And really what we do is we generate highly qualified opportunities, sales opportunities for our clients, instead of just low-level kind of mediocre, warmed-over leads, so that sales can concentrate on what they do best, which is closing business, instead of looking for business. So we help our clients accomplish that so that they can scale to the heights they want to be.
Excellent. Again, my name is John Golden, SalesPOP Online Sales Magazine, where you can actually find Dan's book in our bookstore. It's in the prospecting section of the bookstore, and Pipeliner CRM as well. Again, thanks, Dan. It's been a great conversation. I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Same here, John. Thank you very much.